Robinson's the runner at third with nobody out. Seaver pitching. Low outside fastball hit hard to right center field. Here comes Swoboda out of nowhere. Nowhere. He's made the most incredible catch in World Series history. Holy cow, Frank Robinson has tagged up and scored the tying run from third, but you just witnessed one of the great plays in World Series history.
The Catch with Ron Swoboda, and I'm Chris Champagne. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing really well.
Good. We're here, The Catch, we talk about baseball with one of the all-time greats of the New York Mets, Ron Swoboda. And today our subject is going to be baseball movies, films. Also, we usually start the show off with a trivia question that we answer at the end. So here's my question today. If Ty Cobb were to miraculously come back to life, and he's still a young man and still major league, age, how many at-bats would he have to have without getting a hit in order for his lifetime batting average to drop to 300?
That's good.
A, 3,000 appearances. B, 2,500. C, 1,800. Or D, 2,200. And we'll revisit this at the end.
That suggests, as the people that know anything about Ty Cobb, that he had a pretty good lifetime.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, listen, okay, we're going to talk about films. We talked about, last time after we got off the air, we talked about doing a show on film. So why don't you got a little list there of films that you think were the better ones?
Yeah, I mean, there were the old ones. You remember the Babe Ruth story with William Bendix, and
Right.
they seemed a little hackneyed, and
I'd agree.
The Pride of the Yankees, Lou Gehrig, played by Gary Cooper. Not bad movies for their time,
Yeah.
but I thought the baseball movies got better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you look at the old films, they really never did a great baseball movie before, 1960 something.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a true statement, I think.
Well, I think, and if you try to put them in an order of your favorites, they come at me differently. I think the best movie that I felt like incorporating things that I actually experienced in the game of baseball, Bull Durham.
Yeah.
And the writer-director was Ron Shelton, who was a guy that actually played a good bit of baseball. I mean, he wasn't a bad player.
Yeah.
And I think the amazing thing about that is, he played from 1967 to 1971 in the Orioles system.
Okay.
Of course, I grew up in Baltimore, and I was completely unaware of Ron Shelton because he never made it beyond AAA, but he did get there. But, somewhere along the line, he got, it felt like he had a story to tell about the game of baseball. And Bull Durham was that story, and the characters in it were the star, the guy that had a chance to get to the big leagues, just had to get his act together. Baseball Annies, you always heard about, women that hung around baseball players. Susan Sarandon, played one of those characters. Kevin Costner was the biggest name probably in it, along with Tim Robbins, and whom I met, Tim Robbins, at one time at I think it was probably by then Citi Field, but I met him there, and he was getting autographs, and he was really interested in getting Tom Seaver's autograph at the time, and I tried to get Tim Robbins' autograph, and he was finished with me. I couldn't get him to turn around.
Oh.
So.
Well, that's nice insight.
But I had a brush with him, and but Bull Durham as a baseball story, I thought was more legit.
Yeah.
as just a straightaway baseball story that you turned into a movie. It felt like it had a feel of the game, and the things that, you know, the things that were going on were things I related to as things that actually happened in the game. And Ron Shelton just made them a little bigger than life. And the movie, you know, moved along lines that I recognized. So I that was probably one of my favorites. The other straight-ahead baseball story was A League of Their Own. And that movie, you know, Gina Davis and Rosie O'Donnell, and I think Madonna even had a part in that one.
Yes.
Tom Hanks was the manager. He played a character, Dugan or something, you know, his great line when somebody was crying out there. There's no crying in baseball, and I've used that because I had an incident in my baseball career where I made such an egregious mistake as a rookie and got yanked out of the game by Casey Stengel. I went in a clubhouse right behind the dugout in St. Louis, and I think it's fair to say I cried while I was there alone. So there is crying in baseball, but the League of Their Own was about women's baseball, and it was really, you know, during the war they fielded teams in the Midwest primarily, but we used to meet some of these women. I went to old timers games, and one of them that I went regularly was in Florida in Hollywood, Florida. And they would, you know, we would play an old timers game, and we would. It was a fundraiser for the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. Okay. A children's hospital in Hollywood had made a deal with Joe DiMaggio to use his name. So Joe was paid to be the name of the children's hospital. And Joe, while he was living, showed up. I knew Joe a little bit. He and I went to Vietnam in 1968 together and did a tour of a lot of you know, military bases in Vietnam. And I always respected Joe DiMaggio. When you got him alone and could just talk to Joe, he was interesting. He was baseball. Regal, you know, royalty is a better word. He was baseball royalty from his time with the Yankees and then after that. And of course, whenever he went to an old timers game, Joe DiMaggio, you know, he was required to be introduced as the greatest living baseball player.
I see. Okay. Well, yeah.
But anyway, so we did. You know, there were a lot of these incidents. You know, where I felt like the games that meant something to me. A League of Our Own were probably my two favorite, and Bull Durham probably my two favorite of straight ahead baseball stories. The Natural, I think, was another one, with, you know, Robert Redford and Glenn Close and Kim Basinger. You know, it was and a lot of great stars in that one. But Bernard Malamud had written the book, and I read the book before I saw the movie, and I thought they did an amazing job of the movie. Mm-hmm. And the movie, you know, sort of pivots on a thing that actually happened in baseball, was a shooting of a player. Mm-hmm. Eddie Waitkus was a major league player who had a pretty good career way back when. You know, played a lot of years. He was a first baseman for the Phillies in 1949 when it was maybe the first incidence of a stalking. The woman, you know, who was from Chicago, and the Phillies were playing in Chicago, and went to the hotel, which was the Edgewater Beach, which is where we stayed at in 1965 when I was a rookie with the Mets, and Casey Stengel was the manager. And apparently she shot him. It didn't kill him. He had, he played a few more years after that. But that incident in the Natural, was one of my favorite sort of baseball as the structure for this very interesting story. And Malamud's book was amazing. And so those three. There were others though that I liked a lot.
Well, there was one that I really liked a lot. And it might be my favorite one, and it's I like those as well. Those are on my list. Was Bang the Drum Slowly, which is one that a lot of people don't really know about.
No, I loved it. I loved
Yeah,
it. I that was another one. There's of course the song.
Yeah.
Which is a lament, but Robert De Niro was this Bush League catcher.
Yeah.
Who just loved the game and gave it so much of himself, but he was dying. And there's always that thing in any sort of athletics. You come in as a young man at the peak of your prowess, and we always envision our heroes in whatever sport, but we're talking baseball. When I think of the players that caught my attention, that were heroes to me, that were people, I want to be like him. They were young, and they are forever young in the way you look at them. And here is this, this sad lament of this Bush League catcher who's dying. And De Niro plays the hell out of it, and as he did in most things he did.
It's definitely a lot different than a lot of things that he did as well, because it's really early in his career. But from what he's done since, it is somewhat different. But he was great, I thought.
He worked at it. He worked at it.
Yeah.
I mean, the physicality of it,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things as a former player I look at all the time. It's like, how do you depict the physicality? How do you put the game on the field and try to convince me that these guys, most of the time the answer is you can't.
Yeah.
Because you can't put actors out there. Occasionally there are, they borrow, actual professional players, In the Natural, there were a couple of actual players. It's interesting because one of them is Sibby Sisti, who was a longtime player.
Right.
And the other one was a guy that I'll never forget him. His career was minimal, but he came up, and I just remember this guy, Joe Charbonneau,
Yeah, I remember.
with Cleveland, came up, and it's one of those flashes where a guy comes up and he is looking like he owns the game. And he had that great rookie year. And then the game and the lifestyle just ate him up. And I remember one time when I was on the Yankees, Joe Charbonneau was a young player for Cleveland. And I'm at the batting cage, and you're looking at him, and this guy is physically like everything you'd like to be. I'm at the far end of my career with the Yankees, and here's Joe Charbonneau, who just had this great rookie year. And I remember somebody saying, hit it like you live, Joe. Hard. and that was more than ironic, because Joe petered out pretty fast. Joe apparently lived large.
Yeah.
And ran around and drank too much, and the next thing you know, Joe was not a prospect anymore. He went from a prospect to a suspect in short order. but he played in a league of their own, and you know, occasionally they borrowed players.
Sure.
You know,
Well, that's
and-
what I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to ask you, I mean, you kind of answered the question there about as a player, when you look at these films, I mean, most of them probably don't ring true in many ways. Especially
yeah, you're staging baseball,
Yeah,
and it
it's-
doesn't stage well.
it doesn't look right to me. It never did. I mean, sometimes, I mean, it's better than it used to be, I think. But
Yeah. Look, but it's what you're going for. I'm looking at stuff because I look at baseball the way I always look at baseball. Does this guy look like he can do it? This guy, you know, when you look at a baseball player, I mean, anybody. If I go out here in New Orleans and I'm still a fan of two-lane baseball, I go out and look at these guys, and you're trying to look at them, and here's college players, and you're going, does this guy have anywhere to go? Does he have any ceiling in what you're seeing from what he's doing? And so when you watch it, I'm always going to look at that part of it. And I thought, you know, there's certain movies where, you know, like Redford looked like he could swing the bat a little bit. You know, he could swing the bat. He didn't look like, you know, a left-handed hitter that couldn't do it.
yeah.
You know.
Well, you know, here's an old film as well that I came across that I remember. It was Fear Strikes Out. I thought that was a pretty good film considering everything.
Oh yeah, Jimmy Pearsall.
Right.
Jimmy Pearsall, of course, was an old Met, and of course he was legendary for some of
His antics.
his antics.
Yeah.
You know, when he hit his 100th home run, he ran around the bases backwards.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And he was a really good player,
He
actually.
was a good player
Yeah.
for Boston. He played here in New Orleans, and there was a wonderful story about him playing in New Orleans in the minor leagues. He got thrown out of the game for some arguing a play or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, whatever happened, but he didn't leave. You know, he didn't go in the dugout and disappear or in the clubhouse. He went out in the stands, you know, and he had the fans yelling, "We want Pearsall! We want Pearsall!" here in New Orleans at old Pelican Stadium. You know, I mean, yeah, Jimmy was a different, you know, I mean, he was a different personality. He was probably on the borderline of nuts.
Yeah.
But he was a pretty good player, and like Ed Kranepool, whom I played with a long time with the Mets, remembers him it that way. Like if you know, there's certain people you look in their eyes and you go, "There's a little crazy going on there," and Jimmy Pearsall had a little crazy going on. But yeah, he was, and obviously he was you know, he was suffering from degrees of stress and how it exhibited itself under the pressures of baseball, you know, but he was probably a pretty interesting guy. I mean, usually those people are smart anyway.
Well, that's what the film is about. It's about his struggle with mental illness, I think, is what it, you know.
Absolutely.
Tony Perkins played him. I thought did a good job there.
Yep.
But I remember, you know, I remember as a kid, you know, thinking about him because he was a player, but he was a good player, you know. I mean, for a brief time.
Oh yeah,
You know, he was an all-star caliber player.
outstanding, top quarter.
Right. So it's too bad that, you know, but I guess we all have problems, I guess.
Yeah, but you know, baseball, you know, the pressures of baseball.
Sure.
We talked about Joe Charbonneau and the guys that, you know, they tried to handle the stress with alcohol. I'm not innocent from that regimen.
Yeah.
You know, it's fabulous because people under pressure are interesting to me, and professions that put you under pressure are interesting to me.
Well, I mean, you know, when you're playing Major League Baseball, I mean, you're the toast of the town. You know?
Yeah, but at the same
you're a young
time,
man.
you know, I played back when you had a 1-year contract, and you know,
Oh yeah, you weren't getting zillions of dollars, okay? But I'm just
yeah,
saying. But
we
still,
didn't make a whole lot of money, and I didn't live at the top of the scale in New York City like they do today.
Sure. Well, but what I mean is though, you you immediately become an important person in that city.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not.
Whether you think you are or not, or maybe
Well-
maybe you think you are, but you're not.
Well,
You know, it's
Probably a little of both.
it can be diluting, and yeah, sure. I can remember, you know, being a young guy in New York, me and Tug McGraw going downtown and wandering around the city as rookies in 1965, when I had been there. I'd been to New York, you know, but I didn't know the city. But we wandered around, and you realized later on that you had a degree of recognizability, you know, that the popularity built quickly. And all of a sudden, you know, a whole lot of people knew who you were, and they knew your bio. They, you know, they wanted to be with you. They wanted to be your friend. They wanted to show you a good time.
Right.
And you know, you had I was always drawn more to real people who weren't as interested in all of that, who
Yeah.
were, you know, like my wife of 59 years, like my best friend in New York, a cop out in Nassau County. I mean, I made those kinds of friends. I didn't make friends up in the upper reaches of it, but a lot of people did. You know, you the stories you hear of Joe Pepitone coming, you know, to New York as a New York guy, and hanging out with the cream of the crop, and running around with the mafia guys, and you know, and you know, and ends up doing time in jail. But it can be disturbing and disruptive in your life, to get out of sync with the rhythm of your life, with the level at which you're comfortable, with, you know, where you think you belong on the hierarchy and all that stuff. I tried not to ever you know, with that celebrity thing, I always tried to measure it and to, like, remember it's a byproduct of what you're doing. It ain't you.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you anything.
Well, that's very insightful, especially for a young man. You were a young man then. I mean,
I tried.
we were talking about films here and were you in any film? Did you ever get a chance to get into any films yourself?
Well, my name, oddly enough, as a baseball player, there was a movie, Frequency, which is really a cool movie about, you know, this fireman and his son. You know, the father has been killed in an accident, and the son somehow has a radio in the house, and there's this aurora borealis kind of atmospheric thing that sends the radio waves into another time, and all of a sudden he's on a
Shortwave radio or something like that?
it's a two-way radio.
Okay.
And all of a sudden he's talking to his father back in the 1960s.
Okay. I remember the movie a little bit.
He doesn't know it's his father. It's a wonderful gadget, and it's a wonderful setup as a movie. And the two of these people are talking about baseball, and he talks about, my name pops up, and it's like Ron Swoboda. And of course his father says, Ron Swoboda, I always love Ron Swoboda. Of course I appear in an actual video of me in my uniform on the field at Shea Stadium, you know, and got nothing for it.
Did you even know about it?
I did know about
Okay,
it,
I mean-
and I actually went to New York when the movie went to video, the cassette. A guy brought me to New York, and he paid me for the appearance, and I met the guy that did the movie, and I said, you know, the guy that wrote the movie, and I said, why did you pick my name? We had Bud Harrelson, Tom Seaver, we had a lot of interesting characters, Art Shamsky, I mean, a whole lot, Ed Kranepool. Why did you pick me? And he said, I went into he didn't know anything about the Mets. He said, I went into the files, you know, newspaper files, microfiche or whatever. And he said, everything that I read from you made you sound like every man. And I thought that was the best compliment anybody
it
ever
was.
gave me.
Yeah.
Everyman. Because I didn't want to be anything but that.
Yeah.
To me, I wanted to be this relatable human playing this game that everybody in the stands would give a piece of their body to be able to do.
Right.
And I was getting to do it. And I was, I never wanted to forget that. I'm out there getting to do what everybody in the stadium and everybody watching on TV, if they could, would do. And they were right to feel that way. It was that kind of a thrill. So he said, "You were every man." And I said, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard, because that's all I ever wanted to be.
Yeah, it is a very nice thing. I think it's accurate as well. But just what you just said about how you felt about being on the field and everybody else wanting to be there, how many of what percentage of players who make it to the major leagues do you think have that kind of mindset?
Oh, geez, I couldn't guess.
Okay.
I couldn't guess.
You guess better than me.
No, I think I met a lot of real people along the way. And I don't know if this is just because I've had enough experience in media, and I've written and tried, when you're trying to write stuff and search your own innards, maybe it spawns some of those ideas and whatnot. But most people I've met in baseball way back when were just real people who were in this wonderful game, and took it to levels that maybe most of their youth would never have dreamed could happen to them. No idea that you could move to that level for the time you were allotted to play Major League Baseball with the best in the world. And I feel like, as a guy that played an awful lot of that career in the National League, when the National League was clearly better than the American League, that I was fortunate beyond fortunate, and played for Casey Stengel and everything else.
Well, I was just wondering, how many people realize how lucky they are, in the sense of fortunate they are, I should say. So not lucky, because obviously there's work put into it and everything, but you have some natural talent as well.
Well, I feel lucky to be sitting here shooting the crap with you about all this stuff, just because I'd like to examine that anyway. At 80 years old plus, it's fun to go back and kick it around.
And you're just playing golf in 30-degree weather, so you're doing okay, buddy.
Well, 40. No, it was like, I feel fortunate to be able to do that,
There was a couple of films I wanted, we were almost out of time here, there's a couple of films I wanted to mention. One of them it's called Pastime. I don't know if you ever saw that one.
Wow.
And it's about a minor leaguer. And he's like in his mid-30s, so he's at the end, he's never going to make it. And he ends up helping one of the young guys, showing him how to do this special pitch that he has.
Yes.
But it's about him being the old guy and all the young guys making fun of him, calling him grandpa and everything. And the thing that I remember about that movie, it was like the most honest depiction of a man trying to ask a woman out on a date. He was so nervous because he wanted to go to this party they were having.
Yes.
And he wanted to date. So there was this barmaid that he wanted to ask out, and he went into the bar like several times to screw his courage up. And I said, this is kind of like how it is, actually. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I remember that it has nothing to do with baseball. And the other one is a documentary. I don't know if you've ever seen this one. It's called The Life and Times of Hank Greenberg.
Well, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Hank Greenberg was such a great player for the Tigers, and a Jewish player, and there
Right.
weren't a lot of Jewish
players.
players in baseball. I played with Art Shamsky. I played against Sandy Koufax. But Greenberg was special, and and should be celebrated on that level, for sure. There were a couple of, if we have a little, 8 Men Out was about, the Black Sox scandal.
Right.
I think that was a pretty good movie, and the one that I had my little cheat sheet here in front of you. The other one is Sugar.
Yeah, I've never seen that one. Yeah, but
It was about this Dominican player who came through that process to come out of the Dominican and came to America.
Right.
And didn't make it, and it was really, I think, as vivid a depiction of, the desire of every kid. I always said, in Central South America, I mean, these kids in Puerto Rico, in the Dominican, in Venezuela, I mean, they come out of the womb wanting to be major league players, but especially the Dominican where the league is organized. But this kid, had a chance, didn't make it. What happens then? It was not a happy story in a lot of ways, but but the reality is the reality. The game is not kind to everyone.
Well, most of these films are about success, so that one's the opposite, because you're not given.
Well, yeah, and we know the success of Latin American players and
Right.
how.
Well, not everyone, yeah.
But not everyone.
Yeah, I mean, well, we run out of time. I'll tell you what, on the next podcast, we'll pick up a little bit about some films we didn't talk about, but let's just get to the trivia question. You listened to The Catch with Ron Swoboda. Okay, the trivia question was, if Ty Cobb came back to life and was in top shape and got to play in the major leagues, how many at-bats would he have to go over, not get a hit, in order to drop his lifetime batting average to 300? And it was A, 3,000, B, 2,500, C, 1,800, or D, 2,200. Now you take a guess.
How about 2,500?
25, that's correct. It'd be 2,540, I think, to be exact, which means he would have to go 5 1/4 seasons and get no hits, and then he would be sitting 300 lifetime.
He'd only be a 300 hitter.
And that's amazing.
Well, I admire the fact that you did that research to find that number, because
Well,
that's somebody who likes numbers and stats to find that. But that is a pretty good way of defining a guy that was a great hitter way back when.
And I also found out that he only got hit 94 times, which is, I think, kind of interesting as well, when you consider the era that he played in.
Yeah, they didn't mind
Yeah.
brushing you back then.
Well, anyway, thank you, Ron. You've listened to The Catch with Ron Swoboda. We'll be back another podcast soon.